I saw a link, and was it? I think it just popped up in my podcast thing, as I recall. I don't remember, but who knows where stuff comes from these days. But I went ahead and clicked on it. It was surprising. Why was it surprising? I pretty much agreed with Craig's defense of his own position. He was responding to some guys from Southern Evangelical Seminary. And basically, without going into a lot of detail, it was about the doctrine of divine simplicity as promulgated by and interpreted by Thomas Aquinas. And if we were talking about divine simplicity simply in the idea that God is not composed of parts, that there are not parts of God that are more basic than the being of God. So God's being is not made up of lesser parts that you take a part out and there's no more divine being, but you can identify these lesser parts and you put all these parts together and now you've got God. He's not complex, but he's simple in that sense. Craig wouldn't have any problem with that. I certainly don't have any problem with that. I don't think historic Christian theologians would have any problem with that. But as Aquinas evidently takes this results in the thing that Jake was talking about, the idea that you cannot discuss the attributes of God in a way that would make them different from one another, because that then becomes parts, which denies the simplicity of God. So God's omniscience is his omnipresence. You can't distinguish them. And I'm like, and basically Craig was saying, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, he's right. It doesn't make any sense. And yet that's this classical theism stuff that's being presented now. And it's Aquinas's formulation. Now, I've talked about Aquinas over the years, and we've talked about I don't even know how to describe it, but the absolute centrality of Aquinas to everything at Southern Evangelical Seminary. I mean, it's just he's not just a patron saint, he's almost a central figure there. And what the result of that has been, and it's not been a good result. I mean, when you have enough of your seminary graduates and former employees who become Roman Catholics to write a book, that probably indicates you lost your balance someplace along the way. And Aquinas was the gateway drug for those folks. And they all said it in their book. I listened to their book. They all said, yep, it was Aquinas that got me thinking along these paths, these lines. So I was pretty amazed to be listening to a William Lane Craig rebuttal, defending himself and going, I would agree that criticism, no, that doesn't, I was surprised. But I think it's because I am becoming more concerned about this new emphasis upon classical theology, i.e. Aquinas. And Aquinas, it seems to me that Reformed guys are just overwhelmed with his brilliance. And as a result, can't see the fundamentally compromised foundation upon which he stands, which comes from a fundamentally compromised epistemology, which comes from a fundamentally compromised anthropology in regards to what the gospel is. So I know there are Reformed guys, R.C. loved Aquinas. There are Reformed guys that try to read into Aquinas, but there's just too much there that is thoroughly problematic to really rescue him. And so I am concerned because I'm seeing in a lot of Presbyterian circles, but Baptist circles as well, Reformed Baptist circles, this move toward a Thomistic emphasis where you transition the necessary fundamental foundational assertion of God's absolute monotheism. There is only one being of God. God's being is not complex. It's not made up of lesser subordinate parts that come together to create a greater whole. That's absolutely true. But it does not follow that a description of that being of God, such as his omnipresence or his omniscience, is an assertion that those things have being outside of God's being, so that they are some lesser item. That simply does not follow. Now you're hearing one aspect of what happens when you do the dividing line outside of the studio, and that is one of my cats is interested in treats right now. So that's just later, Darth. We'll just hold on. Trying to tell a cat to have patience. There is a worthless task right there. I can assure you of that. But anyway, so I'm seeing more and more of this, and I'm concerned about it. And so it was interesting to hear William Lane Craig commenting on that, and my going, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.